Thank you. Well, happy Mother's Day to those of you that applies to. It does not apply to me. I had one. In fact, this kind of comes as a really bittersweet weekend for me because I want to celebrate moms and I want to celebrate all those of you ladies who have done such an amazing job in nurturing and loving us into our adult lives. But it was 4 years ago. Now, Mother's Day this year is on May the 11th, and it was 4 years ago on May the 11th that we stood at Lakewood Cemetery, and I said goodbye to my mom. That was the day. We lost her on May 5th of 4 years ago. So May 11th was that day, that moment that we stood there. In fact, the last visual that I have, Lakewood Cemetery is covered with all these wonderful hills, and the last visual I have as I got back into my car was to see her coffin up on the hillside. And I sat in my car and just whispered a goodbye, Mom, and a thank you to Mom. I am a product of my mom. I really am. That's something that a lot of people will know. If they met my father, if they met my mother, there's a really good chance you would say that I lean closer into my mom, and that's okay. But I've never been a mom. So when it comes to Mother's Day and trying to share some thoughts in my heart, I always feel like I can't do a real adequate job because I don't know the minds of moms. I just don't. I'm a guy. We don't do mom stuff real well. We just don't. And so in the messages, I've been knocking this message together through the course of this week, all I could think about was, oh, Lord, help me at least honor moms and what they do and what they say and how they do it and how we can't thank them enough for bringing us into adulthood. You know, it's interesting because moms do have more influence than fathers over the life of their children. It's true. It's a statistic that stands true virtually at every level that moms tend to have more influence over the way a kid thinks, the way they understand, the way they process information. Moms are the ones that technically are the ones who give their kids that knowledge. Dads are the ones who are either working all the time or they're the people who do really weird things that the kids just absolutely love, and then the mom says, would you stop that? That's the way it most often goes. But it's such an essential conversation to have because our kids are tuned, their ears, their minds tend to be tuned closer to the frequency of their mom than it does to their dad. It's just the way we were and the way we were raised. So I have three preliminary thoughts I want to cover today that kind of give you the impact of what happens when a mom has influence over her child. And so the first impact that we have is this one, is the concept that moms, your words are heard. Now, you may think you're saying things that are just kind of, and they're not all important, but a little kid, is listening very closely to their moms. They really are. You don't think so, do you? But the fact is they are. Every word, as I said here, your words are heard. They hear them, they process them. In fact, here's an interesting way that you can tell how well a child hears their mom. If a child has a speech pattern, it's mostly their moms, not their fathers, because they've learned how to speak. They've learned how to weave together a sentence through listening to their mother speak. Because here's another statistics. Moms on average speak 5 times more the words to their children in their lifetime than do dads. I think that's fantastic. It means there's one person that has that greatest of influence. So moms, your words are heard. They hear every one. Here's another one I want you to consider. That would be your actions are learned. So kids are watching, and they're listening, and they're listening, and they're watching. They're paying attention. Your actions are learned. Now, yes, fathers have influence. That's true. That's very true. Earlier this year, I was in Southern California, and I was spending some time with my son and my daughter-in-law, and I was watching my son walk ahead of me about 20 yards or so, and the thought that came to my mind immediately was, that kid walks just like I do. He has the same swing of his arms. He has the same stride on his feet. And so at least he got one thing from me. I taught him how to walk maybe, or at least how to stylize his walk. It's actually a pretty cool walk when you think about it. But the fact is the rest of what our kids learned, and really what they pattern themselves after, comes after their moms. So now here's what the The downside to the conversation, and I suppose I got to bring it up, we always want to believe that those are good things. And sometimes they hear and see not such good things. I got to give an illustration that came to mind as I was putting the message together. A handful of years ago, I was in conversation with a young man who had been to a family event. And so everybody in that family was around, and they had a little buffet that they were working their way through. And there was a little kid in there, a young boy, who was probably maybe 6 or 7 years old. And he was being 6 or 7 years old. He was kind of whining. And here's what his mom said to him: "If you don't stop whining, I'm going to punch you in the throat." Now listen to me. That little kid at that age heard these words come out of his mom's mouth: "If you don't stop whining, I'm going to punch you in the throat." Now, if that's not sad enough, I mean, really, this is where we would go, are you kidding me? Are you honest that that is something that some mom would say to their kid? The fact is it happened. The saddest part was there were adults in the room that didn't say a thing. No one spoke up. We're actually going to talk about that later on. No one stopped the conversation and said, "What in the world are you doing to the brain of that kid?" Kids see what we do, and they hear what we say. And moms, I don't know if you like this or not, but they see you more than their dad. They hear you more than they hear your dad. Here's another one. Your lessons are powerful. And when I say powerful, I mean lessons that are lived through the rest of their lives. One of the most interesting things about this master's program that I just recently graduated from last year, actually, was the study of how long the impact of what our parents say to us carries through our lives. What we are hearing of them, what we know of them, what we see of them. And it's amazing. So what they did was, at the University of Minnesota, they started a system of inventory for kids back in the 40s that were roughly 10 years old. That means they were born in the 30s. Welcome to 2020. So now you've got kids who are in their 70s, edging up into their 80s, and they've been patterning these children, watching their steps, watching their lives for all these years that were a part of this program. Part of the most fascinating of the statistics that came out was this one, that some of the stuff those kids learned when they were that old is still affecting their lives in 70s and 80s. That the stuff that their parents said is still in their head. I can vouch for that. My mom's been gone for 4 years. I still hear her voice in my ears. I was doing something just this week, and it made me kind of laugh because I knew Mom would be there. If my mom had been standing next to me, she would have had a comment. And I heard the comment. It was there. It was in my head. It was like, Mom, I get it. Her voice is still in my head. Her lessons are still in my soul. The way that she taught us, the way that she pushed us, the way that she helped us is still there. It's still in the fabric of who I am. Now, my parents had 5 kids in 6 years. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. That's not real bright. They did that, though. In fact, I really didn't dare say that ever out loud until 10 months after my mom died. My dad died. So my mom died on May 5th of 4 years ago. My dad died March 1st of 3 years ago. And it was me who was assigned the duty to officiate at his funeral. So I'm sitting in the chapel at Lakewood Cemetery, that beautiful Romanesque chapel. I'm sitting there, my brothers and sisters are all sitting there looking at me, and I'm trying to figure out what my first words are, and they were this: our parents had 5 kids in 6 years. That's just dumb. My mom used to follow my father's language through this, because I remember her telling that when she was pregnant with my sister, the older sister, that she had 2 kids on the runway and 1 in the hangar. My dad was a pilot for Northwest Airlines. That was the lingo. That was their lives. That's who they are. It's still who I am. because they're lessons. The lessons that Mom taught me were powerful. I am who I am today because of Mom. I am. So mothers, what an awesome duty. What an incredible way to live. I think if moms actually heard those first three things before they had children, they would reconsider having kids. I think they really would, because all those things are true and all those things play out. But that's not the message for today. That's all the setup. The message for today takes us to Proverbs 31. And the reason I'm doing that is this, because it's Mother's Day. It's Mother's Day weekend. And I would imagine that just about every church in the nation at some point is either going to be preaching on a Proverbs 31 or they're going to be referring to Proverbs 31. And here's what they're going to do. They're going to run all the way down to verse 10, and they're going to give all these wonderful, wonderful definitions of the virtuous woman and how she sells and she buys and she labors and she works hard, and all those things are true. That's why we're not going to do it. Verse 10 is off limits. We're going to go verses 1 through 9. So let's jump into Proverbs chapter 31, and let's talk about moms. The verse starts like this. These are the wise sayings. I love that line, wise, by the way. Honestly, folks, I think there's a whole bunch of preaching in verse 1. I think we could stop here, we could pause here, and we could squeeze this thing completely dry. It's got so much good stuff in it. These are the wise sayings that King Lemuel's mother taught him. Now let's stay right there for a second, and let me tell you who King Lemuel was, because this is the only spot in scriptures where he shows up. I can tell you everything I know about King Lemuel right here, right now. Are you ready? I have no idea. No one seems to have any idea who this guy is. There's really a chance. Let me take you the two prevailing thoughts. The first one is that he may be King Solomon. As you know, King Solomon is the writer of the Proverbs, and there's really a good chance that this may have been a pet name that his mom had for him. It literally means with God, that he's with God. He's like you and I would say they are with a team or they go with the church. He was with God. That's what Lemuel means. The other option is possibly King Hezekiah. I don't know yes or no on either one of those things. Here's what I do know. He had a mom. And his mom took the time to tell him stuff. And not just how to make biscuits. And not just how to vacuum the floor. And not just how to be kind of nice to the people around her. His mom took the time to really build in some pretty cool stuff. That's the stuff we're going to talk about. Now remember, King Lemuel's got a mom, and mom's going to do some teaching, but the first thing she has to do is establish her authority. That's verse 2. Let's go see it. Verse 2 says this, I prayed for a son, and you are the son I gave birth to. Period. We're done. You're my kid. You listen. I love this line. I wish I could tell you the numbers of times that my mom said, listen, listen, listen. You're my son. Now, when moms say that, it's time to sit down and listen. Because what she's about to say is pretty important. And King Lemuel's mom does the same thing. You're my son. I prayed for you. She drags God into this. I prayed for you, and God gave you to me. And now she's established authority. What I'm about to say is pretty important. Listen. Now stop. Let's not go to verse 3 yet. I love verse 3. I love verse 3 with all my heart. I love verse 3. Remember, King, Mom, I gave birth to you. You listened to me. And what does she say in verse 3? Boom. Don't waste your strength on women. I love that line. That is such a great line. Don't waste your strength on women. She goes on to say, women destroy kings, so don't waste yourself on them. Now, King Lemuel, whether it be Solomon or Hezekiah, she is saying this, Sir, son, you're weak. And I think if we were to wander back through history just a little bit, we could come up with a lot of cases where some guy in great power crumples to his knees because of a beautiful woman. Do you want me to list off a few of them? I don't think so. We don't have the time. It's way too much of history. I think she's saying and giving him some pretty good advice. Don't drive your heart, your life, toward women. Now, as we know, just to get a caveat in here, if you jump down to verse 10, she's really setting a bar at the women that she wants him to consider. So she's not saying, hey, listen, just always be single all your life. Because by the time she gets down to verse 10, she's telling whoever King Lemuel is, this is the type of woman you're looking for. You set your bar high. Now, Jody's not in the room, but I'm going to tell you this. God gave me one of those. All that stuff in Proverbs 31 is my wife. I don't deserve it. I wasn't even looking for it. And God said, I love this part, that God loved me so much, he said, by the way, here's Jody. Way outclasses me. I mean, way outclasses me. His mom said, don't waste your time on women. I'm going to jump past a few of these verses. I want us to drive down to the next verse. That is Proverbs 31 and verse 8a, when she starts giving him some really good lessons. I want you to notice when we go through 8 and 9 that everything she says has nothing to do with him. It's not building up his position. It's not building up his strength. It's not building up his power. It's him serving other people. And that's what moms should teach. Look at her first lesson. She says this: speak up for people who cannot speak up for themselves. Boy, if you think Proverbs 31 verse 1 has a lot of preaching into it, wouldn't you love to just pull this one out and really squeeze it hard? Our world is filled with people who cannot speak for themselves. They are the people that we consider the bottom of the barrel. They are the people that we consider ourselves better than. And I know, we don't do this on purpose, but we do it anyway. I'm not trying to be condemnatory. I'm just saying it's the way some of us live. We'll see someone who doesn't look quite like us. We'll see someone who doesn't dress like us. We'll see somebody who's just not quite, they just don't seem to be in the status of maybe finances or whatever that they've got that we may have that looks better. And we will look at them and discount them. Whereas King Lemuel's mom is saying, you be all about them. That's pretty powerful, isn't it? You be all about them. Now remember, she's talking to a king. A king can ignore virtually everybody. I don't know what it is. I've got this fascination with North Korea and Kim Jong-un. I don't know why. I have no idea why. When he disappeared for 3 weeks, I was panicking. I've been watching his life and watching this reckless young man do some of the most ridiculous things, but he does everything he does strictly for himself. He's the leader of North Korea, and he has no idea who the North Koreans are. He was educated in Switzerland. I saw a thing on YouTube this week about all the foods that Kim Jong-un eats. High-end cheeses and champagnes and things like that. His life is all about him. Yet North Korea continues to be one of the most impoverished countries in the entire world. Because he's paying attention to himself. He's not paying attention to the people who are truly in need. Listen, moms, listen. Your child can change the world if they stop looking at themselves and start looking at the people around them. She gives you that lesson. It's a powerful lesson. Speak up for people who cannot speak for themselves. Here's Proverbs 31b, verse 8 and b. Help people who are in trouble. There is another side to that coin that has to be spoken. Look for people who are in trouble. If we don't notice them, we can't help them. Bakersfield, California, where I work, has an astounding number of homeless people, over 1,000. They do a survey, kind of a head count, every once in a while, and they just recently got one, and it was over 1,000 people. These are people who live under the bridges. These are people who live behind stores. These are people who push all their earthly belongings around in shopping carts. What's really sad is when I first started going to this wonderful town of Bakersfield, I saw every one of them. And now they're wallpaper. You can go down the street and there's a guy pushing a shopping cart and you just barely see him out of the corner of your eye. It never even registers that this guy may be in trouble. That this guy needs some help. That this guy is the guy that you need to minister to. This is one of the things I love about Jody and I don't understand about Jody. And it drove me nuts when we first started getting together. When I first started dating Jody, we'd be driving down the road and there'd be a homeless person sitting on the corner and she'd say, "Stop the car." And what? "Stop the car." And so we'd stop the car, she'd reach into her purse and she'd give this person a $5 bill. Now, in my economy of my brain, I turned to her the first couple of times and said, "You understand that they're probably going to spend that on alcohol or cigarettes or something else like that." And she said to me, "If God tells me to stop the car, you stop the car." She said, "It's not up to me to tell him how to spend it. It's up to me to provide it." Oh, I quit asking questions. And now I just automatically stop the car. She doesn't even have to say it anymore. There are people, I've asked this question in church over and over again. How far do you think you have to look to find people in trouble? I mean, in real need. We have gated ourselves into these little tiny cocoons of life that we circulate in, and very seldom do we lift our eyes and look over the fence and realize there's somebody over there that's in desperate need. You can't help them if you don't see them. What a story to tell a child. I'll tell you this, my mom taught me that lesson. I'm not King Lemuel. I'm just John Engen. But I got $5 for my birthday one time. I think I was 6 or 7. And there was a young kid who was coming to church that we knew that they had nothing, absolutely nothing. And my mother suggested to me, because I mentioned it to her, that they didn't smell good. You know, I was always the kid in the Saturday night bath and all scraped off and cleaned up for God on Sunday mornings. And I mentioned to my mom that this kid kind of stinks. And she told me the story of their lives. And she said, "What if you gave them your $5? "Oh, no, you don't. That's my $5. That's mine. That was given to me for my birthday. It's not going away until I decide that I'm going to buy something with it." Because I had thought about 1 billion things to buy with it. I gave it away. It was the right thing to do. King Lemuel, your mom taught you that? My mom did too. Thanks, Mom. Here's another one. This is Proverbs 31:9. Notice that these come in couplets. "Stand up for what you know is right and judge all people fairly." Remember that kid that I was telling you about? Whose mom told him that if he didn't stop whining, and if he wouldn't, she was going to punch him in the throat. What was the duty of every adult in that room? To stand up for what's right. We truly live in a world where we believe that it's okay for us not to get involved, where God is saying to us, get involved. Open up your doors, extend your life, and start doing what's right. Do it. I love this passage. And then not just do it, but stand up for it, where you, God, may ask you at some point to say, "I don't think so." This is all going to stop right here. And if you guys want to hate me for the rest of my life, so be it. But I will not sit and watch this happen again. What a lesson to teach your kids. Because then when they grow up and they see you doing that, they see other people doing it because they learned it from their mom, don't you think we'd have a bit of a different world? I do too. This last part says, and judge people, all fair people fairly. I got to tell you a story very quickly that comes from one of the books of Chuck Swindoll. Many of you have heard the ministry of Chuck Swindoll. I love this guy with all my heart. When I first got into radio, we were playing Insight for Living, and I would make sure that I was in the studio while I was playing so I could hear it. I think I've read every book that this guy has ever written. And in one of the books, he tells a story about a Bible conference he was preaching at. And somewhere toward the front was a couple. I don't know if their age makes a whole lot of difference, but they were sitting over on the side. And every time he got up to preach, the guy fell asleep. The wife was paying attention, and she was taking notes. She was all engaged. She's all in. The guy is sound asleep, and Chuck Swindoll said, it just made me angry to think that this slob is sitting next to this wonderful lady, and while she's soaking in God's word, and while she's just letting it percolate down through her life, her husband is sound asleep. And he said, every time I saw that, every time we went into the conference room, every time I started preaching, there they were, and he's going to fall asleep. And he said, I just couldn't stand it anymore. And so one day after one of the conference meetings, they were standing out in the foyer, and he saw the lady. She was not with her husband. And he wanted to walk up and say, I am so sorry for that slob of a husband you have that it just can't stay awake through the messages, can't stay awake through the service. But before he had a chance, now remember, he's judged this guy. Before he had a chance to jump into any conversation that came even close to that, she told him, Chuck Swindoll, that it was her husband's idea to go to those conferences. And she went on to say how much her husband loved Chuck Swindoll, and they traveled quite a distance so they could be there. And then she said, I really apologize. My husband has stage 4 cancer. And some of the medications he's on just make him so drowsy. And Chuck Swindoll just broke down. He said, shame on me. Shame on me for not judging him fairly. Chief Justice Warren Burger of the Supreme Court said this, and I think it's a great saying. If you have heard one side of a story, you have heard less than half. If you believe one side of a story, you have believed a lie. Isn't that amazing? How people will come to us and they'll tell us their story, and we believe it, and we will believe it hook, line, and sinker, and we'll believe whomever it is they're talking about is that they're telling us the absolute truth. And the fact is, we judge them on the basis of only what one person has said. Where King Lemuel from his mom's mouth heard this: judge fairly. Judge fairly. There's one more. Protect the rights of the poor and those who need help. I heard a politician say when I was small, and for some reason I remember it so well, that we live in a stomp-on generation. I didn't know what it meant back then, but I know what it means now. That we step on people we don't think are quality people. We dismiss them, we set them aside, we don't attend ourselves to them, we don't pray for them, we don't love on them, we don't care about them, we don't feed them. And when the time comes to stand up for them, we're nowhere to be seen. This guy had quite the mom, wouldn't you say? What in the world? And then she jumps from chapter 31 and verse 9 into, oh, by the way, and this is what a really amazing woman looks like. She's done all this. She's teaching him who he is before she teaches him who he should be married to. She is far more interested in his character than his comfort. She's interested that he's doing the right thing as a king, that he's doing the right thing as a person. Oh, how I'd love to work on this one where it says in that passage, take care of the poor, stand up for them. They need you. They need us. Don't you want to meet his mom? I'm not certain that I'd want to be her daughter-in-law with that whole run from women thing, but I want to talk to her in heaven. I want to find out who she is. All I want to do is say thank you. Because the lessons that she taught her son were lessons that could carry with him through the entire trek of his life to make him somebody, a quality human being. My mom told me one time when I was asking her, when I found out that we were going to have a son, I asked her how she did it, and she said, well, I had 5 kids, you're just having 1. And so she said, that's the difference between having a child and crowd control. And I think that's exactly the truth. But the lesson that Virginia Cross Engen taught her 4th child, Jonathan Paul Engen, that's me, was this. Always pay attention to people who are not you. Take care of the people who are around you. Love on them. Be careful not to hurt them. Be careful not to ignore them. My mom wasn't King Lemuel's mom, but I think in a lot of ways she was close. Because a lot of the things that he was taught were things that my mom taught. My mom told us one time that the single greatest goal that she had for her 5 children was to make us decent and upright human beings. That we weren't always screaming for our own way. It's one of the reasons why, of the 5 children, I don't remember any one of us ever throwing a fit. Because she would always tell us, if you're going to throw one, make it a good one, because you only get one. She wanted us to be good human beings. She wanted us to be able to serve people. I stood at my mom's grave 4 years ago Sunday. The thought that went through my head, I didn't officiate that funeral, but I was one of the last people at the graveside. I put my hand in her coffin. I asked her to forgive me for the times I've disappointed her, but I hope and pray that at some point in my walk, there was something she was proud of, and the fabric that she wove to make her 4th child was a fabric that was worthy of the King. That's the goal of parenting. That's the goal of being a mom. There's one more thing. We don't do this because mom said so. We do this because God said so. We do this because there's a greater calling, and even though our mothers have always been the highest of authorities, there is actually authority that's greater than mom. It is the King of all kings. He's the Lord of all lords. Mom, I hope you have a blessed day. My mom's been walking in heaven for 4 years. I don't think she knows it's 4 years. I think for her, she feels like she just got there. She talked to her mom and dad. She talked to all sorts of people that she said goodbye to. But she's still here. She has 5 of us representing her work. But the praise God moment is that all 5 of us also can represent God's work. That we get to be servants of His. I'm honored to say that my parents made sure that we all knew Christ, that we all walked with the King. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. Moms, you got a big role. I'm glad I was just a dad. I'm glad that I just got to watch in many ways. But moms, thank you. Thank you for giving your children the things they need to have to be the people they need to be. Come with me, let's pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, I would ask that you would just remind us of this amazing, wonderful duty and task that you've given parents. But because our children tend to lean so much more hard into their moms, they hear her words and they see her actions. And the lessons that they learn are so profound and so overwhelming and so deep and so powerful that they literally are lessons that we carry with us through the rest of our lives. And Lord, I pray for those moms who haven't been as attentive to their children's needs as they should. May they look at you, the great one who gives us all these amazing instructions. Not because mom said so, because you said so. We will follow you. Come with me for a benediction, would you please? A benediction to moms. Moms, may the Lord bless you. May the Lord empower you. May the Lord give you wisdom and strength that you did not know you had. May he give you the patience of the ages. May he give you the love of God that you can show your children the most amazing path that life has to offer, the path that leads directly to the throne of God. Moms, be blessed, be loved, be strong. In the name of Jesus, amen. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you so much for being a part of our worship services, Restoration Church in Anoka. God bless you.